war in Israel between Hamas and the state of Israel has been horrible from its beginning since Saturday. I fear it's about to get a lot worse. Earlier this evening, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, made a very declarative statement about where he views the situation, what he plans to do, and how he considers his enemies. Here's what he said.
Israel is at war. We didn't want this war. It was forced upon us in the most brutal and savage way. But though Israel didn't start this war, Israel will finish it. Once the Jewish people were stateless. Once the Jewish people were defenseless. No longer. Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come. The savage attacks that Hamas perpetrated against innocent Israelis are mind-boggling, slaughtering families in their homes, massacring hundreds of young people at an outdoor festival, kidnapping scores of women, children, and elderly, even Holocaust survivors. Hamas terrorists bound, burned, and executed children. They are savages. Hamas is ISIS. And just as the forces of civilizations united to defeat ISIS, the forces of civilization must support Israel in defeating Hamas.
Okay, now, who in the West is going to take any issue with a single word or intonation that he just said and take issue with it? No one's going to. But here's the problem, is that the other side is just as resolute. And when you see the same conviction with which they're talking, and I think that, as I'm going to discuss here in just a second after you see this next clip, that with the same way that Netanyahu means what he says, I think that the Hamas means what they say. And let me tell you what that may mean. First of all, here's what Hamas had to say.
إننا قررنا أن نضع حدا لهذا فإنه ومن هذه الساعة نعلن بأن كل استهداف لأبناء شعبنا الآمنين في بيوتهم دون سابق إنذار سنقابله آسفين بإعدام رهينة من رهائن العدو المدنيين لدينا وسنبث ذلك مضطرين بالصوت والصورة وإننا إذ نعلن عن هذا القرار لنحمل أمام العالم العدو الصهيوني وقيادته مسؤولية هذا القرار فالكرة في ملعبه من الآن.
Now, if that looks and sounds familiar, there's a good reason, because that is very similar to some of the warnings that we have from ISIS in the past, and they made good on those threats. And if anybody doubts whether they actually mean that they'll do this, I think you're wishful thinking. And that just really underscores what a horrible situation Israel has at the moment, is that there is almost, in fact, I'll go so far as to say there is no good answer. There is no good solution, because according to what some reports are out there, there's about at least 150 Israeli people who are being held hostage scattered throughout the Gaza Strip. And I think it's very clear that Hamas means what they say, that they'll do that horrific, dastardly thing. We have to understand that Hamas has come to the end of their rope. And I saw some of the comments on some of the other Middle Eastern media today, quoting some of the people, some of the Palestinians, and they say they are not living for the future. They are living for their country, and they don't care if they live. And I think you see that they mean that. They could not have launched this operation with any expectation that they were going to win a tactical victory. They had a good success at the beginning, but they knew, and many of them already have been killed, and they know many more are coming. But they believed that they had no future. And many of them said, we would rather die this way than continue to live in the other way. Now, again, I'm not taking any position on what should or shouldn't have happened in the past. All I can tell you is that Israel didn't make some of the harder choices that they could have maybe years ago to potentially tamp this situation down. Now, again, there may be good reasons why they didn't. There's certainly some people on the Israeli side are very convinced that that's the case and that they couldn't make negotiations. But it doesn't matter at this point. What matters right now is that Israel is hardened on this side and Hamas is hardened on this side. And there are literally millions of innocent Palestinians that are just smushed into the Gaza Strip and can't go anywhere. And then there's some core element of the Hamas terrorists who are using heinous activity. There's even reports today, according to the Israeli Defense Force, that some of their Israeli soldiers were beheaded and recorded just like ISIS did to some of its victims. Now, of course, that's just going to harden anybody on the Israeli side. But here's the part that could really, really be troubled. If Hamas means this, there's a chance that some of those Israeli prisoners who are alive right now may not be, because I just don't think they're kidding on this. And so then the question is, what is Israel going to do? Do they just go in heavy-handed and try and bust into this huge area where there's 2 million people in a very cramped quarters where it's very, very difficult, almost impossible with any kind of degree of certainty for Israel to find out where any of these people are, much less all of them. So the chances that some of the hostages are going to die is unfortunately very high, almost no matter what Israel does. They can't negotiate with these people. Netanyahu said before this speech that he would not negotiate with anyone. And that's setting us up for a very, very dark situation. And I fear for all of the Israeli people who have been held hostage. And I fear for the innocent Palestinians who are going to be caught in the crossfire, because Israel is so angry and so mad right now that if they go in with a ground incursion, there are going to be thousands of more people die who shouldn't have.